Good evening, African Confessions. I am back with another episode. There is a message, it is a sad message that I received. It was forwarded to me by one of our admins, and the message reads like this. Hello, my brother, how are you? I have tried to visit several churches, but most of these churches, they are just fake. Their pastors are fake, and everything that they preach, there is no truth in it. I always believed that if you go and if you confess your sins, like this pastor told me that if I were to confess all of my sins, then God was faithful enough to forgive me all of my sins. So I trusted that pastor. I then went to his house after he had invited me, because the first time that I went to his church, I told him that I had my own confession that I wanted to say, but he stopped me. After hearing a little bit of my confession, he told me to pay him a visit at his house. So the day that he had told me that I should come to his house, I went there. He was waiting for me. It was him and his wife. That pastor and his wife took me into their office. They were sitting on the other side of the desk, and I was sitting on the other side. I started telling them everything that was going on in my life. I told them plain and simple that I was a witch, but I was willing to throw all of this away. That is when I started having an experience with these fake pastors, because after I had given him my confession, he told me not to continue with the story. He asked me if it is possible for someone to get these powers, and once they have these powers, then they can continue as a pastor. I said that it is possible as long as you are praying and you know that what you are saying in your heart, you don't even mean it. And after I had walked out of his office, they kept on calling me. They told me that I had to provide them with all of those powers because they were trying to make their church big. I just stopped communicating with them because this is not what I am looking for. I am looking for redemption, but I just can't find it. I have tried to ask God for forgiveness, but whenever I go down on my knees, I keep on being reminded by my friends all the things that we used to do. And I still do those things. Whenever I kneel down to pray, some of them, they can just walk into that room that I'll be kneeling. Then they will say, "Friend, what are you doing? Can't you see that you are just trying to bring shame upon your family? Don't you know that these things have been going on for generations and generations, and there is nothing that you can do to cut it off from your generation? Can you remove the blood that is inside you? If you can remove the blood that is inside you, so can you remove the powers that you were born with?" My dear brother, I can't even remember when I started practicing witchcraft, but I think I started practicing witchcraft when I was still a little girl. My late mother is the one who brought me into this world of witchcraft, and already I have killed my daughter-in-law. I had to do this. I had to kill my daughter-in-law because when we are doing this witchcraft, it is almost like a calendar. The way that we do it is that each and every one of us, we have our duties that we perform, and it works like a calendar. Each and every month, one of us has to provide meat into the coven. So when it was my duty to provide meat, I tried refusing, but they said that for all these months, you have been eating meat, and we have been providing you with meat to eat because we are also using a lot of animals when we are doing all of this witchcraft. So the rest of the meat that we get whenever we kill a person, we give that meat to the animals that we use in this witchcraft business. I eat the meat just for rituals, but I really do not enjoy it. When the duty was upon me to kill my daughter-in-law, I could not refuse because it was my duty. If the duty is on you, it doesn't matter if they have chosen your husband or your child. You just have to give your child so that he can be sacrificed. I am not well. I am troubled with the spirit of my late daughter-in-law, I'll explain all of the things that I did. The reason why I had tried to run to church so that I can be rescued by the power of God, it was because the spirit of my late daughter-in-law kept on troubling me. But when I went to that pastor, and after I had confessed all of my sins to him, he tried to take advantage of me. He wanted me to make him powerful, but I could not do that because I want to repent. I am tired of all the things that I did. When my mother died, she said that I was the one who was supposed to stay at home because I am the last born, and my husband didn't like this idea than to do what my mother had told us to do. Well, we went to stay at my parents' house. My husband was not happy. He kept on complaining, and he told me that he felt as if he was not a man. How can a man stay with his in-law? But I told him that we had to respect the will of my parents. But I knew that the reason why my mother had chosen me to stay at her house after she had passed away, it was because she wanted me to continue with all of her evil works. When my mom passed away, she left me with 3 items that were supposed to help me with all these things that I am doing in witchcraft. And my mom taught me very well how to handle all of these things ever since I was still a young girl. So I have a clay pot that is always filled with fresh blood. Then I have a hyena and a python. Those are the 3 items that my mom left behind for me to use. The clay pot that is always filled with fresh blood, it is for the python to drink because it doesn't eat blood. Then the hyena, it only gets meat whenever there is death in the community that I am staying, or in the village where some of my friends are staying. Even though me and my fellow witches, we stay far away from each other, but we do communicate on a regular basis. I can be with you now, but in the following minutes, I can travel to another village. Then I can have a meeting with some of my fellow friends. Whenever we have our meeting, we go underneath a certain tree. That is where we do all of our meetings. Whenever we want to have a meeting, we always go to this other tree that is in the forest, and we can have our meetings. And if we decide that someone has to be killed, we write the name of that person on the back of that tree. Then all of us, we will start to visit that person that we want to kill in the middle of the night. Sometimes we can infect that person with a disease, and that disease will finish him off. But on the night when that person will be buried, we will visit that person's grave and we will wake him up. After we have successfully woken him up, we will cut him to pieces. Then his soul will return to the grave. My mother also killed my father and took his skeleton from the grave, and it helped my mother's family to be rich. Just me and my mother knows this secret, but I suspect that one of my uncle is still using my father's skeleton. So I built a very small room to put these things that were left for me by my mother. The hyena and the snake, no one can see it. It's only me that can see it. But that clay pot, anyone can see it. Even my children, they've seen that clay pot, but they think that it is just an empty clay pot that our mother loves so much. But what they don't see is that inside that clay pot, there will be fresh blood. So what happened, Brother Nashi, is that after my firstborn son finished school, he didn't want to continue with his education. He started working. He was working in another city, but I always had my eyes on him. Each and every move that he could take, I could see it. Sometimes I could control him spiritually without him ever suspecting that I was the one who was controlling all of his moves. When he was in the city, that is when he met another girl whom he married, my daughter-in-law, whom I ended up sacrificing. After my daughter-in-law had fallen pregnant for my son, then she started staying with us. When she came to stay with me in the village, because me and my husband, we have two houses. We have one in the city, and when it is planting season, we travel back to the village where most of my friends are, the ones that I am working with in this witchcraft business. When I went with my daughter-in-law to the village, and when my friends saw that my daughter-in-law was pregnant, they told me that it was high time for me to perform my own duty, and they said that they had chosen my daughter-in-law and she was fresh because she was carrying another soul inside her. So they wanted to eat my daughter-in-law and that baby that she was carrying inside her womb. I had a very big argument with them because this was not fair. No one in our circle had ever sacrificed a woman who was carrying a baby inside a womb. Why me? I didn't want to become the first because I knew that the spirit of an unborn is a spirit that you cannot control. Since an unborn baby does not have the knowledge of an adult, how can you communicate with someone who was never born? That person does not know the rules. If the spirit of an unborn decides to come after you, there is nothing that you can do. That spirit can cause you to go mad. That is the reason why I didn't want my daughter-in-law and the child that she was carrying in her womb to be killed. But as we were debating, whilst we were having that meeting underneath that tree in the forest, they overpowered me in that debate. Then the tree agreed that I had to sacrifice my daughter-in-law, even though she was carrying a child in her womb. This was a painful decision for me to take whenever they would come at my house to wake me up in the middle of the night so that I can go and open up the door to the room where my daughter-in-law was sleeping. Because this is what we do. If a witch that is not related to you wants to come and attack you, that witch cannot enter into the room that you'll be sleeping, but that witch will need the help of your relative. So for that witch to cast a spell on you, he or she has to find any of your relative that is a witch, so that your relative can be the one that will open the door to the room that you'll be sleeping in. Because what happens is that when we are sleeping, there are ancestors that will always be standing at the door. In church, they say that it is guardian angels, but according to our tradition, we say that it is the spirits of the ancestors that will be standing at the door, and those ancestors will be looking at you whilst you are sleeping. So what we do in this witchcraft business, if we want to cast a spell on you, and if we have found out that one of your relatives is a witch, we will go and collect that relative of yours, and he or she will be the one who will be walking in front of us. When we will reach the house that you will be at, your relative will come and knock at the door. The ancestors will open up the door for him or for her. When the ancestors will open up the door, and when they will look at her, they will recognize her. But when she enters into that room that you will be sleeping in, she will leave the door open. Then we will have access to your body. Will cast a lot of spells, and you will die because of all the spells that will be casting on your body. Sometimes if we see that we cannot make you sick because of the spells that will be casting on your body when you are sleeping, we can bring food with us. Most of the food that we will bring when you are fast asleep, sometimes when you are dreaming and you are eating, it will be meat that will be taken from a human that would have raised up from the grave, that would have raised up from the graveyard. That is why the food that you would have eaten will end up making you sick. If anyone have a dream and you are eating, you have to wake up and try to pray. If you believe in the ancestors, at least wake up and speak with your ancestors, because it is never good for anyone to eat in their sleep. So when my friends woke me up and when they told me that I had to go and open up for my daughter-in-law, the connection that was there between me and my daughter-in-law, it was the child that she was carrying. So I went and I opened up for them, but I could not go inside with them because my heart was breaking. I didn't want this innocent young woman to die a painful death like this. At least they should have allowed her to have her own child. At least her relatives, whenever they would look at the child that she would have left behind, they will see her in her child. But my fellow friends refused. They told me that it was time, and their animals that they use in this witchcraft business, they were hungry for meat, so we had to do this. After my daughter-in-law had died, her corpse was taken to the mortuary and we planned to eat her body whilst she was still in the mortuary, but we could not do so. Whenever we would go to the mortuary, we could not find her body. So then we decided that we had to wait until the day that she will be buried. Then in the evening, we would go and raise her up from the grave. The day that she was supposed to be buried, her corpse arrived at the house, but something happened. I was stuck, Brother Nashi, as if I was paralyzed. I could not stand up or talk. Throughout the night, I kept on looking at her coffin as people were busy singing, but I could not stand up or talk. I was just stuck. I kept on looking at her coffin. After her burial, that same evening, my friends came, then they collected me. We went to the place where she had been recently buried. I called out her name. Then I confessed to her. This is what happens the night when a person is buried. If he or she has been killed by a witch, when you are standing on top of her grave, when you call out their name, the first thing that you do, you have to confess that you are the one who was responsible for their death. I did so. Then my daughter forgave me. After that, she died again. When someone is killed by a witch, you do not die as such. Because if you die, the time that we will come to your grave, we will not be able to raise you up from the dead. So we just leave you half dead. But after we have visited your grave and after the confession, that is when you will completely die. You won't be able to hear or see anything. After I had confessed my sins to my daughter-in-law, she then collapsed on top of her grave. Then she died. My friends started harvesting her meat, throwing all of her meat into a reed basket. That is the reason why when I gave this confession to that pastor, he wanted all of these powers. He said, the confession that you want to give is too powerful. Please come to my house first. So I thought that indeed he was a man of God. But when I visited him at his house, that is when he told me that he wanted to know the true source of this power. But Brother Nashi, after we had finished dividing the body of my daughter-in-law amongst ourselves, I took my share and I kept it in a place where I always keep all of the dried meat. And regularly I give that dried meat to my hyena whenever it complains that it has gone for a very long time without eating anything. What is happening to me right now is that I keep on seeing my daughter-in-law. Sometimes I can just have a dream or a vision. A coffin will be lying on top of my bed. And if I try to open that coffin, the coffin will refuse to be opened. But in the end, the coffin will automatically open. Then my daughter-in-law will get out of that coffin. I have tried running away, but whenever I see this vision or this dream, I'll be stuck. I will not be able to run away from this coffin. This thing, it is following me everywhere. That is why I have tried to pray on my own. But whenever I try to pray, my friends will immediately visit me. And they tell me that all of these prayers is just a waste of time because I am an evil person and my prayers cannot even hit the ceiling of my bedroom. How will it ever reach the heavens when it can't even reach the ceiling of my bedroom? Brother, my life is very hard. I even regret ever going to that church to confess, because some of my friends who were offering me protection, they withdrew all of their protection. They said that, why did you want to expose us? I thought that if I ran into the arms of the man of God, maybe he was going to assist me, but he just told me that he wanted to know the source of my powers. Please post for me and pray for me. Dear listeners, right there was a message that was forwarded to me. Please let us try to pray for our dear sister. Let us meet again in the following episode.